The Blue Jewel.
Chapter 5. Part 7. The next day, following the king's orders, the trio, plus Agnorak as an escort and a large group of servants, made their way to the great market of Tame. Tame Market was next to the harbour, consisting of a large number of street stalls and shops offering a huge variety of goods from all parts of Shanaris. The sheer number of people who frequented the market was enormous. Arian felt as unprotected as the first day they entered Tame. In addition, the task of finding an outfit and garments worthy of the king's new doctors became hard work. The variety of garments on offer was immeasurable, and on the other hand, there was Gosberg's taste, which was very much his own. Agnorak took it with resignation. It was difficult to make Gosberg come to his senses, when he was also using the gold of a king who possessed a great fortune. Thus the morning passed between visits to the various stalls and with many discussions with Gosberg about what was appropriate and what was not, and what was usually solved with Gosberg buying all the garments. In the end, Arian got tired of all the busyness. From inside the last place where they were shopping, Arian saw a small park located in the central part of the market. It consisted of a few trees and a small fountain that supplied with a small jet of crystal clear water. It was a little frequented place, since the crowd preferred to be in the stalls, eat something in the taverns and inns, or see some street shows. Without saying a word, he left that tent to rest his tired feet in that park. The young woman was relieved when she sat down on one of the wooden benches in the park and accompanied by the Kendeli, who sat next to her. The two looked laconically at Gosberg, who was arguing with a merchant about the price of green turbans. They were truly awful. Meanwhile, Agnorak seemed absorbed in looking at some black fabrics. In the end, the Denka gave up his purchase, in the face of the exorbitant price that the merchant asked of him, so he went to where his companions were, to sit with them, although he was angry with the attitude of the seller. Agnorak stood inside the tent, staring at the black cloth. 40 gold coins for a turban. Gosberg was outraged. Arian watched the Denka wearily. I don't know why I buy so many things that are useless. Gosberg smiled. The king will be very offended if we don't get to the villa with a lot of packages. But Arian and the Kendeli weren't quite convinced by that argument. Surely the turban was for him, not for them. But the Denka paid no attention to them and changed his expression to one of joy. As he seemed to sniff something in the air, something very appetizing, and he licked his mouth. Arian was forced to ask. What happens now, Gosberg? White herb brandy. Distilled in the traditional beer way. Exclaimed the Denka quite excitedly. The Denka rose and ordered the servants to return to the king's villa with the articles they had purchased all this morning. Ladies, I'm going to see for a moment how such an exquisite drink is produced. Wait for me here. It won't be long. The Denka quickly disappeared, entering a small shop next to the park that looked rather suspicious. They both breathed a sigh of relief. Now they would have a moment of rest after such a hectic morning. Arian then saw the people coming in and out of the market stalls, the frenetic pace of the shoppers, the shouts of the merchants offering their wares. I listened to the music of the artists who offered it in exchange for some coin donated by some soul compassionate with their art. Then in the crowd he saw a figure he didn't expect to find in that place, right there. He recognized his white robe, his short, strong figure, with a menacing look. It was Doris, the wizard of Caesarea. She felt a shiver run down her spine and fear flooded her whole body. The magician didn't seem to recognize her. He was carefully observing some spices in a distant post. But even though it didn't seem that the magician didn't pay attention to her presence, Arian couldn't stay there sitting. She didn't want to be discovered by the magician and ran out of that place looking for a better hiding place. The Kendeli looked at her surprised and got up and left with her. At that very moment, as he stood up to escape, the magician turned his gaze slightly toward the park. He saw two figures hurrying out of the place. It was then that the magician recognized her and immediately stopped what he was doing to follow those two figures that were moving away from him. Maybe I was lucky, he thought as he watched the girls escape, and finally in time he would find the assassin he had been looking for months and who he thought had disappeared without showing any signs of life. He had found only a vague hint, for a month ago he had heard of a strange occurrence involving a Denka and a mysterious young woman, who must have been her, no doubt, but nothing more. Agnorok was bored of spending the whole morning looking at dresses and fabrics, but above all of putting up with the Denka, so he shut himself up in his thoughts, especially in the last shop where he noticed something he had not seen for a long time, the Malvasar cloth, which was typical of his hometown. His clothes had always been made with it. It was very resistant, it withstood rain and heat very well, it did not tear easily. In Almera he had a personal chest where he kept a t-shirt, trousers, and a doublet made of the same fabric. The touch with this fabric reminded me of the first time she wore pants made of this fabric, but this one was brown. When he raised his head to see if the girls were still sitting in the park, he didn't see them. That's when he had a bad feeling, put the cloth aside and ran off in search of Arian and the Kendali. Arian began to run, but her worst predictions came true. When she looked back she saw how the magician began to follow her, although slowly. Now she was in serious trouble. How unlucky! It couldn't be, now that he was so close to escaping. That wizard would catch her if she didn't run away. She instinctively thought of the blue jewel and her brother. The wizards must not know that his brother had it, so he must flee to warn him of the danger.